All right, on today's show, guys, we got Shehan in studio. We're going to talk a little bit of college football. We're going to get to our Dairy Max Assistant Coach of the Week nominees and our teams of the week. And then back half of the show, the GOAT will join us. Craig Way, the Texas High School Football Hall of Famer. We're moving his. We used to do Wednesdays with Way. Now we have to do Tuesdays with Craig. So we'll get into that coming up at the back half of the program. But for now, we do have Shehan Jeyarajah, our college football insider, in studio. Follow him on Twitter at Shehan Jeyarajah, spelled exactly like it sounds. Hey, bud.
Hey.
You can spell your name pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. ShehanJeyarajah.
There you go.
It's not that hard.
I cannot spell it that quickly yet.
I will get there. Could you spell your name that quickly?
Yes.
See? There you go.
Pickle's an easy name to spell, though.
That is true.
Just like on a jar.
You
it's
are
hard
right.
to mess up.
Just like on a jar. See, mine is always Pepper with a T. Anyway, we all have those things. Okay, so it's Shehan Jeyarajah in studio. Where were you this weekend? You were all out.
I did double duty, man.
Yeah.
On Friday, I was at Rice versus Wake Forest, my first game at Rice Stadium, and so now I have officially visited all 12 FBS stadiums in Texas.
How about that?
And then on Saturday, I was at Texas versus LSU.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Texas versus LSU. That's obviously a game that caught a lot of headlines.
You don't want to talk Rice, Wake Forest?
We can't. What did you think of Rice?
I think they look great. They honestly, there was a play where one of their defensive backs just got stunned because Wake has a 6'5" receiver, and then they missed a tackle and went 96 yards. And other than that, it's a pretty even ball game.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, because I was working on Friday night, so I couldn't watch the game, and I haven't run it back yet. But when but Tom Stewart looked really good for them. Yeah,
I definitely liked what I saw from him. I mean, he's still clearly taking a second to make some of these decisions. It's a very complicated offense, but defensively they looked really good. They've got some playmakers, and I mean, even when Stewart came in, and I mean, Green has showed some signs, but when Stewart came in, it was kind of obvious that he knew what he could get away with. He kind of knew how to play the position really well at this level, and you kind of got to see some of these wide receiver options that we haven't seen before actually kind of get to catch some passes. So.
I'm bullish on Rice.
Yeah.
I'm bullish on Rice. I think they're gonna be improved. I think they're gonna be better this year.
Yeah. In all seriousness, I'm very high on Rice.
Yeah.
But
well, you have a great piece up on TexasFootball.com right now where you talked with folks, and basically the attitude it seems like around the program is, that's fine. We're not here for moral victories. We're not here. We want to get actual wins.
Yeah. Mike Bloomgren said to me, he said, I almost am tired of hearing about how much better we are than last year. They don't care. They, and against Army, obviously, in the opening game of the season, they looked really good and had a chance to win that game. Against Wake Forest, the score was a lot further apart than the game actually was. I mean, they're not going to beat Texas. They're not going to beat Baylor, but they're going to beat somebody. And it's gonna be big for that program.
Yeah. Well, you just don't beat the troops. Okay, let's get to our to game with Texas. I think there's a lot of folks. There's now a lot of the takes are coming in about what this game actually means. Does this mean Texas is back? It's really a great Rorschach test on how you feel truly deep down in your gut about Texas.
Right.
Because if you want to say that Texas is back after watching that game, I think there are reasons to say it. I think you can look at the offense, you can look at Sam Ehlinger, you look at the receiver core, and be like, man, yeah, this team is trending in the right direction.
Sure.
You can also say, no, Texas is a fraud. They are a bunch of hack frauds, and the secondary we were sold a bill of goods on that. I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I think that I don't know if my opinion necessarily changed on Texas this week.
No. I mean, I don't think that I expected to see from LSU what we saw. If anything, the takeaways from this game are that LSU really might have started to figure this thing out. And that's no value proposition on Texas. That's just LSU looks like they actually have made some adjustments on offense. We've heard forever, Steven Sminger's going to come in and bring a new offense. And turns out, finally, hiring Joe Brady away from, I believe, the New Orleans Saints, who was a quality control coach, he's come in, he's revitalized his passing game. And they've always had good receivers at LSU. They're finally throwing to them. But on the Texas side, I mean, I think that the biggest takeaway from this game is just that Jalen Green is young and that Kobe Boyce is young and that their corners are going to take some time to come along. And that's not necessarily something we didn't expect. They were really highly touted guys coming out of high school, but at the same time, cornerback, maybe more than any other position other than maybe quarterback, is a position that experience matters.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that experience, when you replace Chris Boyd and it was Devontae Davis and PJ Locke, when you replace all of those guys with freshmen and sophomores, it's just going to be harder. And Todd Orlando's defense is built around being able to play man coverage. And, maybe at some point you adjust, but also it's not like Texas defensive backs were in bad positions. They were just getting beat.
Yeah.
And Jamar Chase is really good. Justin Jefferson is really good. And Joe Burrow apparently is the best quarterback in college football.
But the issue for me going forward with the secondary is that, yes, Joe Burrow is good, and yes, the LSU passing attack looks pretty darn good, but Oklahoma still exists.
Oh, yeah.
Gaylor still exists.
For sure.
Who else? Oklahoma State is suddenly looking very, very capable offensively. Tech, there are these games in the schedule that suddenly, if the secondary is not the strength that we thought it could be, it gets a little bit dicey for Texas.
Right. Well, and I think that for me, looking at this year, I know it's not necessarily a super popular take, but this was always a transitional year for me. This was always Texas can be top 2 in the conference. They can get there, they can get back there, but this is a growth year. That defense, you look across that depth chart, it's freshman, sophomore, all over the place, with a couple of exceptions. You have Brandon Jones, but, that's kind of the exception. And you look at sort of the state of this program right now. Sam Elliott will be back next year. You do lose some pieces, but this was always a growth year for me. And it's game 2 of the season. Texas still has a chance to win the Big 12. Texas still has a chance to make the Big 12 title game. Texas still has a chance to be a really, really good team. And losing to the number 6 team in the country, who now I believe is number 4.
Yeah.
That's the thing that happens.
And the other thing, everything's still in front of them. We'll move on to A&M here in a second.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth mentioning that, if they win out, they're going to be in the playoff.
Yeah.
They're playing simple. Now that means beating Oklahoma twice, probably.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they're not going to fall flat on their face.
No,
but
they're not. They are not.
So, beating Oklahoma twice, but at the same time, everything's in front of Texas. So, to me, I think that it's such a Rorschach test on how you feel about Texas.
Yeah.
So let's talk about A&M.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more of, I think, it was a disappointing result.
Yeah.
I don't think they were bad because they were going up against either the number 1 or the number 2 team in the country. No worse than the number 2 team in the country
right.
on the road.
Right.
But Kellen Mond was a pretty significant disappointment to me.
Yeah. So I think that the big takeaway from this game is just that the offense isn't where we wanted it to be. Because defensively, I was actually pretty happy with how they performed. I thought that they did a great job of taking Travis Etienne out of the game.
That's a super underrated thing. For all the talk we have about Trevor Lawrence, they made them one-dimensional.
Yeah. And honestly, maybe this is a take. Travis Etienne's the best player on that offense. I think that he's the best player on their football team right now. And they managed to make him a small factor, and Trevor Lawrence played well, but he didn't play outstanding, and a big part of that is on the back of Texas A&M's defense. They did a good job of getting to him and causing some issues. But offensively, there was just nothing. They scored 3 points in the first quarter, and that was the only real points that they got. They drove down at the end to have a last-second cover, but it was 3 points. And you mentioned Kellen Mond, after looking so good in week 1, just did not look the part in week 2. And again, it's a great team. It's a thing that happens. But we thought that maybe he had taken a step, but now you kind of look back at last year and you're like, where was that Kellen Mond? The one that really almost won them the game against Clemson.
Where's LSU Kellen Mond?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where's the guy that last year he did dazzle at times, and and by the way, the degree of difficulty is going to increase for him.
Right.
Obviously not from an opponent perspective, although Alabama still exists and Georgia still exists and LSU still exists on the schedule. But also, now with Jashawn Corbin out,
right? You
feel like, and I know that they are very high on Isaiah Spiller,
sure.
But he is a freshman.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's reasonable to say that more is going to be asked of Kellen Mond going forward.
Oh, yeah. And he's up for the challenge. We've seen it before, and we saw it last season. We saw how much he grew. But this is where, Kellen Mond can't have on and off games. That was sort of his issue last year, is that he had some of these incredible games. He played awesome against Clemson. He played awesome against LSU. But then, you look across the rest of the schedule, he doesn't play very well against Mississippi State. He doesn't play very well against Auburn, and they lose those football games. And, with the schedule that they have this year, they can't risk having off Kellen Mond games against these teams that they're supposed to beat. Because right now, there's only maybe total on the schedule, only 7 games maybe where they're going to be favored because Auburn comes to town in 2 weeks and they look pretty dang good. It just keeps getting harder. And, we knew it was
going to be tough.
We knew it was going to be tough, but now not necessarily having the run game that you hoped for and not necessarily seeing as much from the offensive line as we maybe hoped to see too. I mean, it's Clemson. It's arguably the best team in the country. There's no reason to overreact or write anyone off or anything like that, but I did hope that, Texas A&M being whatever the number 12 team in the country this week, I did hope that it would look like Clemson at least had a peer.
Finally, one more team I want to talk about. And by the way, you'll for those who don't know, subscribe to Republic of Football, our college football podcast hosted by Shehan Jeyarajah for all things college football. This is just a little taste, little appetizer.
Weird, but all right.
Yeah, it's true. SMU.
Yeah.
Probably the team that we are coming away this week most impressed by.
Yeah.
My goodness, that was unexpected.
Yeah.
And really impressive, like all the way around. That was
part of it.
Really nice.
Well, this SMU team last year, if they play Arkansas State and if they play North Texas, they're probably coming away 0-2 in these games.
Oh,
and
we saw North Texas last year, and it was ugly.
Right, and now some of this is also issues on defense for North Texas, but offensively, it was all there. It was all back, and SMU just did a great job of getting to Mason Fine, making things impossible for him. He only had 152 passing yards after posting 444 last year. So they did a good job of getting to him. And then offensively, I mean, it's just so obvious how much better this offense runs with Shane Buechele at the helm. And it really opens up the game in a lot of ways for Xavier Jones, who struggled with injuries last year, and even Keemon Freeman having some opportunities too. The game is just so much more open now for SMU. And a big part of that is finally getting some linemen in place that they feel more comfortable with. Part of that is obviously Rhett Lashley getting more comfortable with his personnel. Part of it's having, how many duos of wide receivers are better in the state of Texas than Reggie Robertson and James Prochet?
Yeah.
They have so much talent, and finally it's starting to execute. And defensively, I think is really the place where we have to be most impressed. And Kevin Kane had a great first year as defensive coordinator at SMU last year. Their defense was better than their offense in a lot of ways. But this is a dominant defense. This is what you expected to see. This is what you hoped to see if you were an SMU fan. This is what Sonny Dykes wanted to see when he hired Kevin Kane as his defensive coordinator from Northern Illinois. It was just such an impressive effort all the way around. And all of a sudden, you start looking at that schedule, and it looks pretty okay.
Especially in an American Athletic Conference, it doesn't look like it has a favorite right now. It looks, well, it may have a favorite, but not an overwhelming one. It doesn't look like a world beater conference.
I think that UCF is always going to be tough. They don't play them this year in the regular season. At Memphis, that's going to maybe be their toughest AAC game, and that's probably a loss, right? Whatever. Yeah. And then you go on the road against Houston. That's going to be a tough game.
Tough, we think. Yeah.
But Houston hasn't necessarily showed what we hoped as yet. And after that, and you play at TCU, but that's not a conference game. After that, it's at South Florida. I think that's very winnable. Versus Tulsa, versus Temple, very winnable. Versus ECU, at Navy, versus Tulane. SMU could easily win all those games. Yeah. And they get Tech State this week they should beat. Yeah. So we're not that far off from talking about them as an 8-9, dare I say 10-win team.
It's all very good. He is Shehan Jeyarajah. Listen to his outstanding podcast, Republic of Football, wherever you get your podcasts, and on TexasFootball.com. And follow him on Twitter at Shehan Jeyarajah. Spelled exactly like it sounds. Shehan, appreciate it, bud. And I'll see you out there at your desk a little later.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks, bud.